The Philistines you have received, cartoons of brutes with a giant named Goliath, are portraits of a people who did not read their Bible very carefully. The real ones are refugees from a fallen world, Aegean sea people, and Israel's neighbors, trading partners, in-laws, and yes, sometimes enemies. Let me introduce you to the shadow characters of the biblical drama. I'm Bill Krapek, fresh, honest readings of the Bible outside of the trenches, in the spirit of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. New videos every morning. Now, my last video was about the Bronze Age collapse and how Israel is the pearl that was snatched from the fire. The Philistines were the fire. Now, these are my father's people. These are my ancestors. These are my folks. They were the fire. They came crashing into the Eastern Mediterranean about 1200 BC. The Egyptians record their coming, talk about fighting with them, talk about them settling into cities. Now, we don't know exactly how far the Philistines settled, but there is a kingdom, they certainly in modern-day Gaza, but there is a kingdom in northern Syria called Palestine, which is related to Philistine, although sometimes it's also called Philistine. And there's a king there named Ittai. And generations later and centuries later, the Assyrian Empire had a rebel king in the city of Ashdod, and that is in modern-day Gaza, named Imami. And that means the Ionian, which is what the Middle Easterners call the Greeks. Because if you look at the old Greek dialects, Ionian is the major dialect. It's a language of Homer, mostly. Athenian is Attic, which is a sub-dialect of Ionian. The Greek of the Bible is Koine, which is basically based on the language of Athens. Okay, now, the Assyrian king who had to fight off Imami, run him off, is Sargon II, king of Assyria. Now, starting about his time, there were kings at another city called Ekron, which is also a Philistine city. And there's a king list that shows up there. A royal dedicatory inscription at Ekron, Seymour Gittin, Trude Dothan, and Joseph Navarre. But there's a follow-up on that in here. Excuse me while I scramble. The name of the goddess of Ekron, a new reading. Aaron Dembski, Bar Ilan University. Okay. Talking about Navarre. Navarre, we don't know the name of the goddess there because it could either be Potnia or Potgaya. Potnia is an Indo-European word meaning the lady. Well, but the gimel there is kind of gimpy, and so we can't quite read it. So it could also be Potgaya, which is an obscure goddess. Never reads the name as Potgaya. His assumption that the divine name is of Greek origin and is not Semitic is quite plausible and supports the theory of an Aegean background for the Philistines. In the same vein, Navarre proposes that the king's name, Akish Ikausu, should be derived from Achaios or Achaean, meaning Greek, another word named for the Greeks. It's what they call themselves in the Iliad and in the Odyssey. Though I would still prefer its identification with the name of the hero Anchises, which is the ancestor of the Romans. In fact, the personal names of this king's four-generation genealogy should draw attention, for they are uncommon, seemingly West Semitic hypochoristic forms without a theophoric element, which may indeed turn out to be Greek in origin. Okay, theophoric, that means the name of the god is in the name. And you see that every name I can think of from the Middle East has a god's name in it, or a name is implied. Daniel is El, Isaiah is Yahweh, Isaiah is Yahweh. There's none of that here. For instance, Padi should be compared to Pade or Padio from Linear B, which is a system that Greek was also written in before the alphabet, identified with Pandion from the Iliad, Aesid with Hesiod. Now, the great poet of the Greeks was Homer, but Hesiod was right up there and lived at the same time. This list comes from less than 100 years after Homer. And the earliest king on here, I think Ada, was around about the time of Imami. Okay, Ada can be identified with another Trojan, Idaios. So I think they are Greek. Let me pick up where I left off. The Bible's coastal enemies keep leaving Aegean fingerprints. That's true. Read from the coast instead of the hills, instead of the hill country where the Israelites were. And the villains are a sophisticated maritime people. The stage the biblical play was performed on, and nobody wanted to watch the stage. The Israelites are the stage. We are the play. We were when we crashed into the Mediterranean, we were back. This wasn't the first time we were there. We were already there during the time of Abraham. So we've always been there. And by the time I'm done with this, you'll understand why I believe there's a reason the New Testament was written in Greek, which is one of the languages that we spoke, the other being Latin. Okay. In reality, from looking at the archaeology, and as you're about to see from looking at the Bible itself, what is the relationship between the Philistines and the Israelites? They were frenemies. The word is Aaron Meyer. He's the Israeli archaeologist who's been digging up the Philistine city of Gath for almost 30 years. Shared pottery, shared cult and cuisine, trade, intermarriage, decades of daily life braided together, running right alongside the wars, because we're also fighting. Not a cartoon of enemies, but two entangled peoples. And entanglement is a word used by archaeologists. There's a big Neolithic settlement in Turkey called Catalhayuk. The archaeologist who dug that up, the latest one, well, he might have been replaced. Entanglement was a big idea, a big thing with him. They even learned how to write together. And here's the thing. Now, of course, there's going to be stuff coming from the future, more digs from the future, but right now, the alphabet is showing up in the Shephelah. You have the coast, and then you have the hill country. The area leading up to the hill country, where the Philistines and the Israelites intermingled, it's called the Shephelah. That's where the alphabet first shows up, and they're both using it. Gath, where Aaron Meyer dug, there's a lot of the alphabet there. So they seem to have been learning at the same time. So the alphabet that the Bible is written in, right now, it appears the Philistines were picking it up at the same time the Israelites were. And the Bible itself gives up the game through the cantor of Jerusalem. I'm going to go ahead and read this. The author of Samuel, the hidden novelist I introduced you to, paints both halves honestly. Now, I said in the beginning, this is a portrait painted by people who don't read their Bible very well. They're not. David shelters for a year in Gath as the vassal of King Achish, which we just seen is probably Aegean, Greek. Gittite soldiers serve in his own guard. These are Philistines. Goliath's sword ends up treasured in the sanctuary of Nob. The enmity is real. There are the wars. There's Samson, who kicked our ass, to be honest. And we did steal the Ark of the Covenant. But so is the intimacy. The cantor didn't flatten my people into monsters. Later readers did. And here's the showpiece of this video. I talk about the marriage of David and Jonathan. I didn't notice this till I was researching this video, but another Jonathan appears. In fact, he's a combination of Jonathan and Ruth, who with her mother-in-law Naomi. Let me read this portion here from the Bible. This is 2 Samuel 15. 2 Samuel 15, we'll start with verse 18. And all his servants passed by him, and all the Kerethites, and all of the Pelethites, and all the 600 Gittites who had followed him from Gath, that's where Meyer had dug up, passed on before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, Ittai means with me, or companion, or companionable. And remember, David's name means the beloved one. Why do you also go with us? Go back. Okay, I got to set this up. The king's own son is trying to kill him and take over the kingdom. Absalom. The king's own son is trying to kill him. So here's this Gittite who's a Philistine. And here's David talking to him. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, why do you also go with us? Go back and stay with the king, for you are a foreigner and also an exile from your home. You came only yesterday, and shall I today make you wander about with us, seeing I go and I know not where? Go back and take your brethren with you, and may the Lord show mercy and faithfulness to you. So he's saying go back to his son. Go with your life. I don't hold you responsible for this. But Ittai answered the king, as the Lord lives, and as my Lord the king lives, wherever the Lord the king shall be, whether for death or for life, there also will your servant be. And David said to Ittai, Go then, pass on. So Ittai the Gittite passed on, and all his men and all the little ones who were with him. And all the country wept aloud as all the people passed by. And the king crossed the brook Kidron, and all the people passed on toward the wilderness. Ittai answered the king, As the Lord lives, and as my Lord the king lives, wherever my Lord the king shall be, whether for death or for life, there also will your servant be. And this harkens back, and I'm not the only one to notice this, to Ruth. So Ruth's sons have died, and she's all alone, and she's going back to her home, and she's seeing her daughters-in-law off. But she says to Ruth, Naomi says to Ruth, See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave you, or to return from following you. For where you go, I go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Now let me go back to my script here. Ittai refuses to leave David's side. He does it with the oath. Wherever my lord the king shall be, whether for death or for life, there your servant will be. That is Ruth's vow to Naomi, almost word for word. And Jonathan's loyalty besides, even to death. A Philistine cast as the very model of covenant faithfulness, and the name seals it. Heard as a cantor's craft, not a cipher, Ittai carries the sense companion. It literally means with me. It's even glossed as companionable, clinging to David, whose name means the beloved. The companion, staying with the beloved through death and life. The enemy written in as the faithful one. Now here's another connection. Ittai literally means, this is a literal sense. Just because that word literally means something, like butterfly, doesn't mean butterflies. But literally it means with me in Hebrew. The Gospel of John has a special word. The Gospel of John has a special word for the Holy Spirit, the Paraclete. Para, one called to one side, and resonates very nicely with Ittai. Now, so just saying. Bottom line is this. These are my Father's people. I call us the children of Proteus. We're the Proteans because we're shapeshifters. We're not a single nation that's lasted for thousands of years. We're a group of seafarers. We are a lineage. And we would switch identities and switch masks and just become different people. And we were very good at that. And it's hard to nail us down. And what I'm doing is I'm showing you that we are humans. And that the Bible, the best of the Bible, tells you over and over again. Because we show up, we're not discussed a lot, but we still show up later on. Later kings in Jerusalem had us as bodyguards. We were faithful to the kings of Judah. At Ekron, the royal inscription, the alphabet there shows influence from Jerusalem to the Hebrew Bible. They're being influenced by the Hebrew alphabet. And again, I'm not claiming, I don't like reading out stuff, but I'm not claiming one unbroken nation across 3,000 years. And I'm not scrubbing away the dark days because we stole the Ark of the Covenant. I'm tracing a stock, a seafaring bloodline that kept changing masks, and a relationship that was always more tangled than just enemy. We weren't just the enemies of the Israelites. As I said, we often intermarried with them. And I go back to this, and I discussed this before, and I'm going to do it again. Previous videos, certainly on the Bronze Age collapse. Israel is the play. We are the stage. We were there from the very beginning, protecting David. Before then, protecting Abraham and protecting Isaac. Probably protecting Jacob. I'm not quite sure about that. They are the play. We are the stage. There is a reason why the New Testament is written in Greek. Yes, it is a Jewish book, and virtually all of it was written by Jews, except for the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts. But even with Luke, the Greek is very Jewish. If you were a Greek living in the Mediterranean at the time, you would instantly recognize these Greek speakers as Jewish. And so that's the point of this. Now, tomorrow, I have YouTube videos up here that go back 11 years, even before then. But 11 years ago, 12 years ago, closer to that, I started doing videos on the archaeology on my people. And then later, the DNA started rolling in. And so the next episode, tomorrow's episode, is going to be an extension of this one where I go over the DNA. Because when the DNA came in, it was very gratifying. So, iron sharpens iron. I'll see you then.